Guys, so this is the part 2. So let's talk about depression. And what is depression? Depression, obviously everyone knows what it is. Let's not get into it. Let's talk about how it affected me. My first, let's slow down for a second. People don't know what depression is. Depression is a change in mood, and what happens is you have a changes in your sleep cycle. For example, you may have trouble going to sleep, or trouble staying asleep, or trouble waking up. It leads to odd hours, thus odd sleeping patterns, right? Odd times to be up or awake or to be doing things, right? Missing work because of this. Having irritability and like a bit of anxiety. You just don't trust people, and you think a bit of paranoia. You just think I can't deal with the world. I'd rather just stay inside. A lot of distraction behaviors. For example, gaming or smoking marijuana, or not really taking your life seriously or taking any goals seriously, just kind of living. And so this happened to me. My first foray or experience of depression was like major depression was after I went through a breakup with someone about 12 years ago, something like that. 11 years ago, and it really affected me hard because it was actually the first time I was actually also coming out to my family. And so my symptoms primarily consisted of me just staying home a lot and staying on the computer watching YouTube. And then kind of what happened was I enjoyed that a lot. I stopped really like eating food that was already in the house from my family when they would go grocery shopping. I would develop my own kind of cocoon of, I'd go to work, then I'd come home, and most of the time I would, order some pizza or chicken, fingers, and eat that while my mom, and my dad and everyone in my family would be doing their own things. We kind of just slowly drifted apart at this time because everything that was happening in the household. And we had our own little worlds, and that's what kind of happened. And it kind of, it started the whole cycle of, well, I don't need to leave my home even for food. So I would just end up having food delivered. I wouldn't leave. I would force, for example, my dad to get cigarettes for me after work, because I didn't even want to go to the 10-minute walk to the store. I even had a bike, I think. And it was because it was just too much for me to I guess anxiety provoking, too fearful I would feel. I was going to be judged. There was just too much hurt outside for me to deal with at that time. All I was seeing was the negative. I was seeing just judgments and the world being black and white, good and bad, angels and devils. And that's a thinking error I can see now. It's a thinking error to believe that the world is made up of like angels and demons and good and bad. I mean, there's that conflict between religion and science, between psychology and belief and everything. I've made this point clear. This is a psychology channel. I'm a Muslim. I'm a gay Muslim. I'm a Muslim, and I'm proud to be Muslim. And yeah. So I stopped going out a lot, and I started like reading way more. Doing a lot of YouTube research on YouTube. And then one of my earliest memories was actually listening to the Quran. Because I was always kind of religiously minded, religiously bent. Right. I was always looking for like spirituality and religion. I always had debates with my colleagues and friends at high school about religion and stuff. I was always known as that type of person. And I learned about the Quran. I don't know exactly how. I just heard about it, right? And the word Quran, and like I think our family had one in the house, right? So I remember I was familiar to a certain extent with like Muhammad, right? Those words, the hereafter. I was taking the Sunday school, whatever we have in Islam, and I knew like not the basics. I knew like just a brief familiarity with Islam and Muhammad, and I guess just that's about it, really. Like my grandparents were really into religion. I didn't understand at that time what they were doing. I know we would like turn off the lights and basically have, dim lights, and we'd all sit with our hats and look humble, and we'd have some water and some food, and we do a lot of like prayers and shake our heads a lot. I learned later this is kind of like what Sufism is. They were doing group dhikr, or remembrance of God. So without going too much into it, that's my primary influence of Islam. And one of my earliest memories was my father, who was Muslim, as well as my brother and my mother. I mean, sorry, only my father and mother were Muslim. My brother, I don't know about his faith. He wasn't definitely practicing, so I'm not sure what to say what he was. And my father walks in and says, "Oh, so in a very gray business suit, very beautiful business suit, very lined and stitched and hemmed and tailored. It looked very nice. It looked like it was a very, very nice suit. I remember it was almost sparkling. I remember he came up to me. He looked very professional, very business-like. Probably going for a meeting, jet setting. He said to me, "Oh, your mom and I are getting divorced now." And he said it in a way like he said it a million times, because I have heard this at least 2 or 3. Marriage has always been rocky. There was troubles, big trouble, small troubles. It's always kind of been on the rocks, okay? And this time I thought it was just, another one of those big troubles. And it wasn't until it got kind of serious, like, things started hitting the fan, and when a whole bunch of conflicts of things happened that I'm going to mention in no particular order. One being my father. One being my father. I love him. He's a good man, and we all have flaws. His just sudden, introduction of his new wife, and also the fact that my mom asked me, "Who do you want to live with?" And also the fact that she left and didn't come back. I remember going to work one day and remembering that she's not going to be home, and that was somehow exciting to me. Not in a pleasurable sort of way. Not in a pleasurable sort of way. I don't even mean that at all. It wasn't. At this point, I was numb. You know how you have fight, flight, freeze? I was in the freeze stage, so I wasn't really processing emotions. That's why it's very difficult for me to actually remember what's happening. And I do remember this distinctly, though. I remember looking forward to the fact that Mom was not home. Not because she's not home, just simply because that was something to remember and something different. And that's what I was remembering and I was feeling. It's one of those brief moments you have. I don't think it means anything, except it just helps me recall. It helps me learn. It helps me recall what happened. Okay, so that was depression. Got very depressed, and that's depression. Now, if we talk about causes of depression, I don't know much about that. I know that definitely depression has a biological component, like a physical component. For example, exercise and proper nutrition will affect the way you feel. Certain foods and vitamins and exercises, and I'm gonna get a bit new agey here. I'm gonna say also breathing exercises. I was thinking more like it's the same thing. Relaxation breathing exercises, nostril breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, belly breathing, right? Counting breathing. Having control of your breath was very important. Is one of the kind of things to remember. As I was trying to say, though, physically, if you don't get the proper nutrition, if you're not getting proper UV sunlight, if you're not going out and just smelling the air, and if you're eating stuff that your food doesn't have color on it, and being in front of a screen a lot, it will contribute to a lifestyle of cocoonness and depression, right? So that's the first thing I'm going to say. Second is there is a cyclical, psychical, physiological, mental, what do they call that? Physiological. So it's affecting the brain and the body, but mostly it's affecting the brain and the body, mostly the brain. Right? That mental cognitive disruption does happen with depression. Most of the time it's with loss of focus. You would be doing a problem and it would become too hard. You would find problems that were easy becoming hard, right? Simple problems. You would find you would not really want to think through problems. You would just prefer to get distracted. And that's where the whole environment comes into. You're surrounded by these UV lights, lack of sunlight, you're eating alone, thinking alone, you spend way too much time alone. Because we sleep alone, then we shower alone, we go to the bathroom alone. So when we start eating alone, that's another thing that's bad, right? And we start entertaining ourselves alone, and then we have this whole cocoon at this point. What else do we need, right? What else do we need at that point? We don't need anything at that point. We don't need people. It leads to lack of empathy, lack of happiness in a way. So that's the causes. Basically, there's two main causes: biological and physical. Biological and I want to say metaphysical, spiritual. Psychologists will use the word cognitive, right, or mental. So let's talk about treatment. There's hope for people who have depression. I mean, let's talk about me. I went from working a full-time job. I was working probably 4 times a week, and going to school. I was basically going to school and working part-time, and then I started going to work full-time at my dad's place, and that's when I had trouble maintaining everything, going to work and dealing with all of this. So, my parents and everything, and so I had a lot of period of time where I actually needed help with money, and it's, this is things people should know, because you want to know if my treatment methods work. There was a long period of time where it was touch and go. I didn't really have a lot of money, and I was highly dependent on others, such as my family and government assistance. Eventually, I kind of scraped myself back a little bit in terms of I admitted my denial. No, I didn't admit my denial. I became in such deep denial about my sexuality. I actually convinced myself that it was the devil who was possessing me and convincing me of me being gay, right? Because what happened was I converted to Islam, and then I realized it's wrong to be gay in Islam. So then I left Islam for 3 days, came back, and made up my mind to reconvert to Islam. And I was really going through a tough period this time, as you can tell with all my changes. A lot was going on. At this time, I was also a victim of sexual abuse, and blah, 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 blah. Point is, I was heavily abusing marijuana and alcohol, and I was basically going out with different men every night. And I ended up believing I was possessed by the devil, and after that, I actually started working a lot. I got exercised regularly. I went to about 3 or 4 sessions of exorcisms and spiritual healing, in complete denial of the fact that I am a homosexual. I mean, like, I'm gay. I like big dick. I don't mean to humor the issue. This is just how I look at it. Sometimes I like, okay. And so what happened was, sorry, still here. So what happened was, I'm just trying to get my cigarettes out. One of the first major treatments I did was accept I needed, this help. Anyway, going back to the exorcisms. After that, I started learning more about Jim Rohn. I learned about a thought came to my mind. Excuse me a second. A thought came to my mind. A friend of mine from high school, who's one of my early friends, we talked about religion. He met me one time when I was about 17, 18 in Oakville. And he saw I was very high and very drunk. And he said, hey, man, he was a very Christian, apostolic Christian this time. He said, hey, man, so nice to see you here. And he was basically telling me, you shouldn't drink and everything. And I understood what he was saying, right? It was a bad time to see him, right? I was drunk, and he was probably just got out of church. And he said one of the things that probably resonated with me at that time, which was, he said, you should really reconsider the path you're on. And I'll never forget that, because after I got exercised, I remembered one time when I was on his Facebook, and he had a quote of Jim Rohn, the famous businessman and philanthropist and motivational speaker who passed away. And the quote was, "You'll keep getting what you're getting if you keep doing what you're doing." Right? You only get what you put in. You keep getting what it's something like that. You keep getting what you're getting if you keep doing what you're doing. You only get what you put in. And it didn't really resonate with me when I first saw it on Facebook. When I got exercised, this thought came to me. And there's no discounting exorcism. I think it's positive to a certain extent, as long as you don't fully believe. I mean, there's caveats with it. Maybe we can talk about it in another video. So I believed that this was kind of like a good thing for me to get into. So I got completely obsessed with, for good or bad, self-help and motivational. Definitely I got obsessed with Jim Rohn. I do this with you too. I find a topic and I just get obsessed with it. I got obsessed with self-help and Jim Rohn, the power of attraction, Earl Shove, who was his teacher, Earl Nightingale, who I guess wrote a book about this stuff, the power of attraction, or the law of attraction, positive thinking, and discipline, self-discipline, motivation. And I was very successful. It was probably one of the most successful times in my life. And a lot of what I've said has been hurried. There were times, as I said, I didn't really discuss when I was on government assistance. And I was, for example, in doing nothing except going to the mosque and reading. And there was many times where I was doing other things. I was completely schizophrenic the other way. I was smoking so much marijuana. That's all I'd do. I'd wake up, smoke marijuana, and go to sleep, smoke marijuana. And it was tough with all the moves that happened as well. And I also had other boyfriends I had to deal with that I also broke up with for other reasons. Just, you don't want to get into it. But you move on with things, You don't fully move on, and then you move on, and then you really move on. So I was at that stage where you don't fully move on yet, and I've just gotten to the stage of you just you don't move on, and which is in a way how you move on. So that's what happened. That's the treatment. I also discovered other avenues, because one of the main treatments is not just exorcisms. It's also coming to the core of who you are and accepting who you are as a gay Muslim. If that's who you want to be, then that's who you are, and no one can tell you different. No gay person can say you're not Muslim enough, and no Muslim person can say you're not gay enough, because it's who you are. It's your self-definition. The other thing I realized is getting UV light. They have them on Amazon or Walmart. They mimic sunlight, so especially with people that don't have windows. Very good. It mimics sunlight and promotes natural hair growth. You can even grow a plant under it, and it's been proven to help people who have seasonal affective disorder, a sort of like depressive subtype for people who, in the winter, you don't get a lot of sun, so it causes depression, because a lot of sun causes, vitamin C, which apparently is linked to happiness. As I mentioned earlier, there's a physical, biological component to depression. Other treatment methods were medication, obviously Prozac, long-term help me, and then you can take like Seroquel sometimes if it gets really, really bad. Sometimes though, I'm not a doctor though, I'm going to tell you though, I'm going to caveat medication by saying this. I don't recommend this for anybody else. You need to be your own judge of how much medication you should take in consultation with your doctor. Knowing full well your doctor doesn't know you and has constraints on his time, and he gets paid to see you. So it's going to be you at the end of the day who fully cares about you. And so you got to ask yourself, how much do you want to take? And weigh the side effects with the proposed benefits. I also realized behavioral therapy helped a lot. The thing is, it's a balance, because when I do too much into one thing like behavior therapy, I neglect other things like spirituality. Because there's there's contradiction between the two. There's always going to be a contradiction between spirituality and psychology. All right, so treatment. What else? I've heard prayer helps a lot. One of the main things is just being at peace with yourself. If you have a contradiction like this, be at peace with yourself. For other people, like in the video who have panic disorders, there obviously is some underlying issue why you have that panic. You need to be at peace with yourself, and if you're gonna panic. I mean, it's not a bad thing to panic. It's only when it becomes too much. So learn to come to the panic and invite the panic in low doses, knowing it's safe and it's not harmful, and you're not doing anything that will cause your death. As long as you do it safely, as long as you do it mindfully, prepare beforehand, do some deep breathing exercises. As in the video said, cue relaxation exercises, where you kind of like cue yourself to set up relaxation things. Very important to breathe, to just stay in the moment. Doesn't matter how long you take. we are making artificial constraints like, oh, you need to be better in 6 months, 5 minutes, 6 years. These artificial constraints are not important. What's important is your metric of getting better success. But what we did today was wake up, eat, and go to sleep. That's better than staying in bed all day and contemplating suicide. So don't listen to other people and their metrics. So treatment, I think that's the end, right? So that's my depression. I'm gonna do one for all the major ones. All right, so that was depression. Tomorrow, I don't know. Tomorrow, no video. So sorry guys, no video tomorrow. It will be Saturday, hopefully, inshallah, as we say in Islam. God willing, it will be Saturday. And so Sunday, I'm gonna make a video, inshallah, about social anxiety. Actually, no, I'll make it about anxiety. Because what I realized is you got to get into the two main distinct types of mental health disorder. Three main distinct. There's depressive, there's anxious, and there's known as like manic / psychotic. And I've experienced all three. And so I covered the second one first, which is depressive. I'm going to cover the next one I'll be covering is manic. I think that's fun to cover. Schizophrenia, borderline personality, bipolar, stuff like that. Then I'll get into anxious, which is the most popular one. Okay, and depression is the one that definitely is very common. The most depressive one, the most common one, is very common, and there's one. It's the most common in terms of like seen at the emergency room in terms of for suicidal thoughts or behaviors or plans. Most people end up killing themselves if they don't get treatment. It's very important to stress this. If you feel depression, in terms of you have a plan to kill yourself, call 911, call Coast. There's a lot of good websites out there, and you just need to Google them. Google suicide hotline in whatever country you're in, America, Canada. Even if you're in America, Canada, write the state or the province you're in, city. Even if you're in a big city, there's a lot of things. And I know where I live, there's CAMH. There's a lot of resources for people, so don't give up on that front. Manic psychosis is the most for hospitalization in terms of long-term hospitalization. With depression, it's a short-term hospitalization followed by medication and followed with the doctor. With the manic psychotic, I think it's more long-term. Just based on my brief experience of staying there and what I've experienced and observed. And then, of course, anxious is the most popular, where some people don't even believe it is a thing. You just get through it, right? The greatest generation got through it, right? It is something that I believe is overdiagnosed. It is also something that I believe was underdiagnosed 50 years ago. So, you know, we would cart in the anxious with the manic and the depressive, and they would just get worse. So we need to have these distinctions for a reason. So I'll talk about that thirdly, and then hit me up, guys, if you have any questions about these videos. If you want, what different content you want. This is my daily documentary. It's more of a video journal at this point. It is me though, live in the flesh. You've seen me do crazy things, from cry to get angry, to puke twice, to not make videos, to have successful videos. It's life. Some days you're up, some days you're wrong, some days you're down, some days you're in the pit of hell, some days you're feeling good. So most of the days you're just feeling like you. Medium, good, average, happy person. That's life. So this is, hopefully this video helps people and benefits people. As I said, this video is primarily aimed towards traditional people who don't, believe psychology. I'm telling you, I'm from that culture and that background. Even though I was born in Canada, I don't have the accent. I live with someone who is highly traditional, and I went through that whole gamut of dealing with that and denial and almost being convinced of it. You got to confront who you are and what you are, and that why you feel the certain way you feel, why you fear what you fear. And let it come. Accept it. It's not going to kill you. It's not harmful. It only makes you feel that way. And the whole point of this is to make you not feel that way. This is medicine. It's good for you. It's like Buckley's. You know that commercial Buckley's? It tastes awful and it works. Buckley's is a cold medicine. Do you know Vicks? Vicks Vapor Rub? Okay, do you know petroleum jelly? If you take petroleum jelly and you put a decongestant in it, which is some sort of it comes from Nepal in the high mountains. You mix those two things together, it's a medicine. And the thing is, they've taken this medicine to also suppress coughs by adding, I guess, different things in it to make it into a syrup form. The only problem is, when you take this petroleum jelly Nepal mixture and put it in a syrup form to drink and taste. It tastes awful. The only problem is it works. Same thing with accepting mental health as something that you could have and you have been affected with daily, and it's very common, and someone in your family has it. This is just common stuff. We need to get over it. It's 2018. It's not the devil, I mean, for the most part. And, so these are things we need to wake up to and believe, and not be so closed-minded. I know a lot of people say, like, to me, like, at least my father said, you're so closed-minded, relating to, like, Sufi metaphysics and positive thinking. And I sometimes think you're sometimes the same way in terms of psychology. You don't believe in psychology, you believe you can just get through it. So, same with my mother, these people came from a different generation, they believe you can just walk through it, walk it off. No, some things you just cannot. Some things you need to process, and really need to sit with someone who knows what they're talking about to have you hug it out, cry it out, punch it out, process it on your own terms, not society's terms. All right. That being said, I appreciate you guys watching, and remember, guys, stay with it.